Hey everybody, John Chow with Cruise Addicts here, and of course the Viking Cruises group. And thank you for joining us this wonderful Sunday afternoon. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. And of course, we're back together to talk about Viking. So much news today, this week. We've got 2 new itineraries and extensions. So much going on with Viking. And of course, we're honored to have the top global producer for Viking Cruises for many, many years, and an award-winning travel agent, Michael Consoli here. And so we're gonna get Michael added. Good afternoon, Michael. I'm saying good morning because I think I'm drinking too much coffee. But how are you doing today?
Good. How about you?
Good, good. So glad to have you back. I know we've been both traveling and all around the world here, and but glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here. So sorry we started a little late today.
It's all right. You know, everybody's ready to wait for you. We've got a lot of people watching right now, and it's you're worth the wait with your knowledge, and we really appreciate having you here. And on that note, if you're watching, please write your comments below. Please check in. I'm going to put a little banner up here. Please check in, leave your comment below, and of course, ask your question for Michael. He's an authority of everything Viking. I know a lot of people ask questions on the group, and sometimes I tag Michael in there, but he is very busy taking care of his clients, of course, doing the best for them. That's his full-time job. But now we have the luxury of having him right here, right now, during this time. So if you have a particular question, please take the time to write it below, wherever you're watching, and we'll do our best to answer it. I know Michael, appreciates that and wants to help out during this special time. So, and of course, if you don't have a question, just let us know when you've got an upcoming cruise and check in. We want to say hi and see your face, though. So I know we've got 2 itineraries, and I know you wanted to talk about some extensions. I don't know about much of the extensions because I don't really cover that much as far as the news side of things. At least I hadn't seen that. But so wherever you want to start, I know the big thing was Viking just unveiled 2 new expedition voyages in the Arctic.
Yeah, in the Arctic. So those have been created a lot of excitement, I think, because I know that they had taken away a couple of expedition sailings to Greenland and things like this. So this kind of puts it back on, on the map again. So that new Into the Northwest Passage, which is a really unique itinerary that is round trip from Greenland and goes by a part of the Northwest Passage that many people want to see. It's it's definitely a very expedition type experience. So that is offered. It's 13 days, starts at $11,995 per person, and is offered starting in July of 2025. So there are 4 dates currently that are available, and it is also a date that a sailing that can be booked with the $25 deposit, the anniversary sale they have going on right now.
And can you remind me, I wasn't sure if the anniversary sale was still going on. Can you remind everybody what that is and how long that's going to? Because I thought it might be finished.
Yeah, it ends at the end of the month. So
okay.
It's 3 more days, I think. So just for everybody who's watching, today is May 28th. And so it ends May 31st. So the $25 deposit is an anniversary sale that they are running that, as far as we know, is going to end at the end of the month. So, but it is a reduced deposit with, instead of a $500 per person deposit, it's a $25 per person deposit.
Wow, that's an amazing savings. And I know we've talked about locking in those, just putting those deposits down, locking in that vacation experience. And of course, we keep talking about this, how everything is very, selling fast, that inventory is low, that there's such high demand for these cruises, and really many different cruise lines, but especially Viking, that this is a great opportunity to lock something in. And if you want to change your mind later on, I guess you can, if you might just lose that $25 deposit at the very least, right?
At the very least, that's the only thing you would lose. And really you can lock in something and kind of change it or update it, as much as you want. So,
and on that note, I'm going to put your contact information down below here. Let's see. Yeah, there it goes. If you want to contact Michael and actually take advantage of this deposit, because you only got a couple of days left. I actually thought it was, like I said, I thought it was over. But if a couple of days left to actually put a $25 deposit on certain Viking sailings, give Michael a call, 1-800-913-7245, or email him at michael@planmycruise.com. And of course, check out his website. It's really great at planmycruise.com. And wow, just really, really cool. I know we've got some comments coming in here. We've got Facebook user saying hello. And then they're leaving in 9 days on the Med Iconic Shores sailing.
Yeah, well, that's a nice sailing too. Mediterranean's iconic shores. Very nice. So, yeah.
And then I know the other itinerary that came out was, let's see here, and I think this is really cool. We've got, I went too far there. Viking announced also, it's so much news for Viking, announces new itinerary that's going to be the Treasures of the Rhine. And for the first time, Viking's going to be sailing year round, all winter, I guess, on the Rhine, which I thought was really great.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Clearly, the demand is there. Typically, they don't cruise during that time of the year, so they have added this new itinerary to kind of address the desire to travel at that time of the year. It's a very nice itinerary. Yeah.
And as you know, I'm a big fan of the Christmas markets. Now, granted, the Christmas markets won't be going on during many of these. Of course, that's a shorter season. But I think it's great that people can actually cruise this time of year because it's wonderful, whereas the crowds are not large. You get to experience the same places. And if you come from where I came from at the time was warm weather, it's kind of nice to try something different, to be in a different climate, and of course in a different part of the world. And it's to me, it's just a win-win, because we all know that it's nothing worse than being at Disney World in the middle of August or July, and you're dying of the heat. So even there's nothing wrong with going to a place and it doesn't have to always be sunny and hot. It can actually be a little cool, or even maybe a little cold at times, but you can always bundle up for that. I think the heat's the worst.
Yeah, I agree. But the truth is that this itinerary is really offered at a time where it is a little quiet. So, the pricing does reflect that. It's cold at that time of the year. And so it is not a tourist time, which is nice. But that also means that there might be some things that are not open. It's definitely an offering for people that are looking to travel before the season really starts. And the pricing does reflect that. And I think it's a great opportunity for people that may want to try a river cruise at a lower price point to look at that itinerary. But, keep in mind, it's not going to be what a normal river cruise is like during the river cruise season, because, things may not be open that would normally be open. And but it is a really nice itinerary for sure. Very desirable.
That's great. Now, what type of as far as what is the price difference? Can you give like a ballpark as far as the difference between high season and this type of season? As far as the savings goes?
Yeah, I mean, typically, like the regular sailings start at, for the standard cabins would start at maybe $27.99. This starts at $19.99, and then the airfare is at $5.99 a person. So even like just the upgrades to the veranda cabins, which are what we typically would recommend, is only $29.99 per person. So it's definitely a great value. It's just that it includes all the things that Viking usually includes: beer and wine with lunch and dinner, complimentary Wi-Fi, complimentary excursion in every port, bottled water all day long. Those types of things. It includes all the same things. It's just going to be at a little slower paced time of the year to travel, and it's going to be colder.
Yeah, which is fine by me. So
Yeah,
sign me up.
yeah.
So, yeah,
Like we have that, the Treasures of the Rhine, which is new, and then also the Lyon, Provence, and the Rhineland, which is a 15-day itinerary. It's that does it basically is the connection of Lyon and Provence, and then Rhine Getaway. For people that want something longer, like the Grand European or France's Finest, that are basically France's Finest is 2 7-day cruises put together as well. This new itinerary, Lyon, Provence, and the Rhineland, can be, from Avignon to Amsterdam or Amsterdam to Avignon. So it's a really nice itinerary with a train connection in between. So it's definitely a great option for people that are looking not necessarily on the Danube.
Okay, that sounds nice. Let's see here. So, yeah, like I said, if you haven't asked any questions or write a comment below here, please do. We'd really appreciate to hear from you and check in. And I know Joe actually is asking a question here from Facebook. Have you heard anything, Michael, about Viking about opening up Russia again?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to hear about that for a number of years. So no, we've not. It will be quite a while.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think with the war still going on, there's going to be it's going to be quite a while.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's over very soon, and we can get back to normal in that part of the world. Wow. But thanks, Joe, for checking in. We really appreciate it. And everybody else watching, please check in. Please say hello. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any Viking related questions, please ask. We really love to hear from you. This is a great time to ask Michael. Michael has been a top global producer for Viking for, I know, over 5 years. It's hard to keep track. You're such an award-winning agent, Michael. I've got to start writing this down again here as far as it changes every year, just more and more accolades, which is really, really wonderful. And I know we just had a lot of people in the group yesterday was talking about your wonderful service, and it's really, really great to hear that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I am very grateful to have such loyal clientele. I do, my team and I work very hard to make sure that we take very good care of our guests, and that that we're responsible for them from the planning stages all the way to the time that they get home, that they have an excellent experience. So that's our goal.
And Kathy West is writing in from YouTube. She said she did the Venice to Athens on Viking Ocean cruises in March or mid-March. The weather was cool but nice, and there were no crowds anywhere, which is really, really cool. So, there's nothing better than that.
Yeah. Yeah. So everybody loves it when there's nobody around. So as do we, by the way. I love to travel. I mean, during COVID, I went on two or three different cruises, and I remember being in Versailles and there not being anybody there. So that was a real treat.
Yeah, and we got Michael Willius. Hopefully I'm saying it right. We're on the Danube Waltz at the end of June with the fully escorted Munich and Salzburg pre-tour. Will Viking offer more escorted pre and post tours in the future on the river cruises?
Yeah, there are more pre and post options for people now. Like, I mean, just last week or the weeks before, they introduced some new extensions for, some of the existing itineraries, like for Pharaohs and Pyramids, the Egypt cruise. They added Istanbul. They've always had Jerusalem and Petra. They also have the British collections of ancient Egypt, which is relatively new. So they're always coming up with other options for people that are looking for something, excuse me, different than what they've had before. So yeah, absolutely, they will have other extensions.
Really cool. And I know we were going to talk about some extensions, or any other extensions that you want to bring up that that someone hasn't mentioned already.
The one extension that I think has become really popular and only introduced like in the past year is the Lake Como extension on the Rhine. Lake Como is also offered on the ocean product on most of the Mediterranean itineraries that either leave from, that leave from Venice, I guess. The Lake Como or Como in the Italian lakes has been very popular on the ocean. And so they did about a year and a half ago add it as an option on the Rhine. So it is a really nice extension with the proximity of that to Basel to board the ship. It is a great option for people that may want to visit Lake Como but not do the ocean product. But, they have an Aix-en-Provence extension on the Lyon and Provence itinerary, which is relatively new. So that's also pretty nice. Antwerp is an extension now for most of the itineraries that leave from Amsterdam. So they're always looking for other things. I think that the question really has to do more with escorted or like cruise tour experiences, which they are adding more and more of, because I think people really see the value in having those days, not only additional before or after the cruise, but also having the excursions and things like that planned along the way, which makes it very easy for people to experience the culture of a specific area. So I do think we'll see more and more cruise tours issued as things move on. I think they're constantly looking for other opportunities. But the one thing that I think I will mention is that the extensions, and we've talked about this before, John, the value of the extension really depends on the guest. The Viking extensions, as a general rule, will include meet and greet at the airport, luggage porterage, the motor coach from the airport to the hotel, a Viking host at the hotel to take care of any needs or questions that the guests may have. They also will coordinate the transportation from the hotel to the ship, or any tours that are included, as well as any optional excursions. The packages also include breakfast and then the transfer to the ship, or vice versa at the end of the trip if you choose to use the cruise line's excursions. And when the guests go to the airport, the motor coach pulls up at the airport. There's a team of Viking people there to meet the motor coach, help with the luggage, get the guest inside, get them checked in, get them to security. So it is very reassuring to have that service all the way through. And if people see the value in that, then they do see the value in the Viking extensions. Because I know there's a lot of discussion about being able to do the extensions on their own, or not, not seeing the value in the extension. So I don't think that people realize everything that's included. It's not just a bus ride and hotel. It's usually, as I said, has a Viking host. They take care of the luggage. They make sure that you get checked in. It's a lot of hand holding, and that has a lot of value to a lot of people. And some people don't see value in that. So, but one of the things that is very important to mention is that for extensions, the people also are under the impression that they are unlimited, that the cruise line just has as many as they possibly could need for that particular itinerary, and that's not necessarily true. They will usually only have 25 or 50 packages per sailing for the river, more than that for the ocean, obviously, because every as a motor coach associated with a motor coach seats 52 guests, and so they have to have they want to fill one motor coach, they need to have 2 motor coaches or 3 motor coaches. That's how they determine how much space they need, but they only sell a certain number of packages. So I highly recommend that if people are looking, like with this reduced deposit promotion, to book, that they hold what they think they need, so that they can make sure they have it. If they decide later they don't want it, that's fine, it can be removed. But always take a look at the extensions and see which ones appeal to you, and hold them as an option until you have time to decide about it.
Yeah, and I know we talked extensively about that for $25 you can lock in your dream vacation, that bucket list experience, even years down the road, depending on what's available for the deposit. But you can lock those things in, save it, and then move on if needed, right?
Exactly. It's not necessary. I mean, you don't absolutely have to take it. And I think that's something that, people, they constantly ask me, well, I can add that later if I want. Well, the truth is you can't always add it later, because it may not be available. So,
right. But that's what I love about these deposits. You can lock certain things in. You can always give them up and give up a small deposit, but
yeah,
you can't go back and rebuy something that's not there, right?
exactly.
And you totally answered my question, which I thought was brilliant, because I was going to ask you about, the value of these extensions, because, and what's included, because you always don't, like, I've never done an extension, so I don't know all those things. So it's great to hear those detailed things. And I know you've done a lot of these things on your own. Is the value there overall? All those things. I mean, it sounds to me, just as a layman, and I'm not just sounding like a sales pitch here, but to do all those little things together on your own out of pocket would actually be more expensive, most likely, than to do it and have it all planned by Viking. So is it a really good value?
I mean, it does depend, on the type of accommodations that you're using. Now, Viking is typically using their, moderate, like a Marriott, a Hilton, something similar to that. Their premium extensions, there are the standard extension, and then they also offer a premium extension. The premium extension will include a 5-star hotel like the Four Seasons, or the Augustine, something like that. So those are going to be like upgraded hotels. But I mean, if you look at it, it just depends really on what the guest wants to spend on a hotel. But is that in order to accommodate independent travel before or after and do an independent extension, if the guest is taking the cruise line air, they have to pay the air deviation fee, and then they have to get their own transportation, and then they book the hotel. It's not just the cost of the hotel. And I think that's what a lot of people look at. They're like, oh, well, I can get the hotel for $4.99 a night, and Viking is charging $6.99 a person. I think once you factor in, all these other things, including the transfers, breakfast, the tour, it's really kind of hard to compete with the pricing that they're providing. And there are going to be places in the world where the extension is more desirable or more important to have than in other parts of the world. For instance, in Amsterdam or Paris, the guests could probably do an extension on their own if they didn't want to have all that hand holding and they wanted to, mess with their luggage and all of that. But in Venice, for instance, the cruise line extension is probably a better value because most people don't realize that transportation in Venice is all done by motorboat, and that can be very expensive. And so, there are places where it definitely is a better value. And that's the type of thing that with our clients, we explain to them what the differences are between doing it alone and doing it with the cruise line and seeing which one fits them best, because it's not a one size fits all situation. We have to help the guest determine what the best value is for them. And that's what we do is we work with them to figure out what would work best for the guest. And then if they want to do it independently, we help them plan it independently.
Well, that you answered my question. Thank you. Because, I see so many of the comments on the group, and there's always that person that says, I booked this on my own, and they're very kind of adamant about it. Like, I'm booking this on my own, but I'm thinking, the transfers, how are you going to get your luggage? Unless you know these places backwards and forwards, I really would prefer to have a little bit of hand holding, at least the first time. Right. Because, and then how you the ship, where is the ship? And people are like, where's the ship? That's like, so you don't know where the ship is. And then if it was just because it docked somewhere on the last cruise doesn't mean it's going to be there on the next cruise. So all those little logistics, I think, is probably worth having that hand holding. And I love Viking. The Viking has the transfers included if the air. I mean, it's really, really nice. And personally, I don't want to deviate from that. I don't want to just sound like a fanboy here. I really like that part of the product, and so that along with extensions, I could see the value in that as well, because just, you don't have to think about it. I think when you got to think that hard about it, especially on a vacation, it's not like it's in your own backyard. So.
Yeah. And I mean, I think people, again, it's all a matter of value to the guest, but it's funny. One of our vendors, not Viking, a few years ago put out a video of the difference between having somebody escort you, once, meet you in baggage claim and you doing it on your own, and, getting the bags, fighting the bags, getting them all to the door, getting outside, finding a taxi, flagging down the taxi, waiting in line for the taxi, being able to communicate with the taxi driver in a foreign country, telling him where the hotel is, trying to pull it up on your phone, giving him the address, putting the luggage in the car. I mean, it's really, in the end, if that's the chaos that people are used to dealing with, or that they, are not afraid to encounter, because that is what happens, the package is something that might not be the right fit for them. But for most people, it's going to be a great fit, and nobody does it the way Viking does. They always have the right number of people. It's very easy to find. They have a process. It's so funny because we giggle a little bit when people call. They're like, "How am I going to find the Viking person?" And you're going to be like, "You're going to find the Viking person." Yeah. As soon as you walk outside, you're going to see that bright red clipboard with Viking on the back of it, and they're going to lead you to where you need to go. So it's very reassuring to make sure that you're going to have somebody there to meet you, especially for the first time guest.
Yeah. So you're bringing back a memory that happened recently. I was in New York City. Someone was supposed to meet me there, and they weren't there. So I had to do it on my own, and I'm walking around. First, you have to figure out, I was like trying to find out where they were going to be. Then you have to figure out where you get an Uber, where you get a taxi. So I'm like walking around this terminal. I'd never been there before. And every time, of course, I've done it with Viking, they're right there in the baggage claim. 1, 2, 3, done. They take your, tell you where to direct your bags or take them from you, and it's all good to go. but we're talking about a long period of time trying to find out if someone was still there, then doing that. And then the cost of it out of pocket, it was a lot of money for like a lift to the hotel area, which really adds up. So all those little things can be significant.
Yeah, and not all these countries have Lyft and Uber and things like that. So you're stuck taking a taxi or arranging a very expensive private transfer. And, that is something that, people don't want to do. So I do think that the extensions are a good value overall. But again, it's somebody like me or a sort, an experienced travel agent that's going to be able to help you determine whether or not it's the best fit for you. So, yeah,
All right, so
definitely.
we're going to get back to questions here, if that's okay. I know Kathy West has one from YouTube. She has a question, doing the Iceland, Greenland, Canada, Viking in 2024. Any must-do excursions other than the free ones? Good question. Not
Yeah.
sure.
So, it kind of broke up for me, so I was trying to find the question. Oh, it's right there on the thing. Doing the Iceland, Greenland, Canada, any excursions to do other than the free ones? Well, I think that the best person to ask, Kathy, is the travel planner that's assisting you with the booking. But excursions are really all a matter of what's important to the guest. And so what might appeal to me and might appeal to you would be very different. So I usually go over with my guests, have them review what interests them, and then I share with them the experience that either I've had or my guests have had with that particular excursion. So, and for Iceland and the itinerary that you're looking at, there are some very specialized excursions. So it's something that I would encourage you to talk to your travel planner about and have them walk you through what might be the best fit for you. That is what we do with our clients. We help them select their excursions based on what's important to them and what appeals to them, what their interests are. And so, there's definitely things that are going to be amazing, but there's not one thing in each of those that might appeal to just everybody. I mean, I know that in Iceland, you're going to want to go to the Blue Lagoon, things like that. And those are things that, you can talk through with an experienced travel agent. They're going to be able to assist you with that.
And if anybody watching wants to actually call Michael and have him be your travel agent or transfer booking that you used that you might have booked online or maybe early in the process, you can give Michael a call. His number's down below, right there. 1-800-913-7245. Of course, email him, michael@planmycruise.com. And we really appreciate it. So we've got more questions. This is great. Thank you very much, everybody, for asking these questions. We're still early in the process here as far as this live stream. So please write your comment below. Check in, say hello. We'd like to see you. There's so many group members watching and people from all around the Cruise Addicts sphere here. We really appreciate y'all being here. So thank you all for watching. And I know many of you are watching this later on replay. And Michael, some of our replays are like thousands of views, which is really exciting. So we appreciate you as well watching this after our live streams. So let's see here. We've got James actually is checking in from YouTube. Michael and his team are awesome. We're considering a river cruise sometime. What is a typical day and night on a river cruise versus an ocean cruise? And that's a great question because I think they're totally different.
Yeah, they are totally different. Thanks, James. I appreciate the compliment and the question. The river cruise typically is going to start or the ship docking late the night before or early in the morning in the port that you're going to visit that day. And then breakfast is typically served from like 6 to 9 o'clock, with the first excursion usually leaving around 8 or 9 o'clock. Those included excursions are usually 3 to 4 hours. Maybe a walking tour of the city or a motor coach tour of the city, and then back to the ship for lunch, and then an afternoon excursion that you could have optional that you selected from the optional excursions, or because of the proximity of the ship to the city, you could just walk off and explore on your own. Because if you went on the morning tour, then you're relatively familiar with where the ship is and more comfortable doing that, exploring on your own. So in many of the ports on the river, you can do that. And then back to the ship again for dinner. Usually there's a lecture or, during the cocktail hour, there'll be a presentation about what you might see the next day and how that day is going to play out. And then you would have dinner. And then in the evening, there may be local entertainment on board or a lecture about some historic site that you may see the next day or that you saw that day. And And then, for most people, it's time for bed, or for those people that want to hang out in the lounge, the bar is open until the last person leaves. So that's your typical day really on a river cruise. Somewhat different than an ocean cruise because it takes longer to dock an ocean cruise, disembark an ocean cruise. The tours are always at different times on the ocean cruises. In other words, the entire 934 guests on board the ocean cruise don't go on the same included excursion like the river cruises do. So it is somewhat different, but in theory, it's the same. So, but yeah, that's a great question. And I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, thanks, James, for asking the question. We really appreciate it coming from YouTube. And so we've also got a Facebook user from the group. Recently, I've learned some of Lake Como extension guests being put in hotels 30 minutes away from Lake Como rather than Albergo Terminus. Any insight as to why? Are they booking too many extensions? And I don't know anything about this, so maybe you can help us, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, I think across the board, we're seeing such demand for the hotels all over Europe that even some of our other vendors are getting out of the hotel part of the business altogether. So like some of our major cruise lines have dropped hotel extensions just because it's very difficult to get the space that they need for the demand that's combined with what they need and what, people just going to Europe after, 2.5 years of COVID lockdowns. So I think that we'll see that subside. I have not had a guest that has been affected by being put 30 minutes away from Lake Como. So I can't really speak to why in the specific situation that you're asking about, but it's not typical and probably related to the demand that Europe is seeing, which is far higher than it was in the past before the pandemic.
Great answer. Thank you for your insight on that, Michael, because I know that's a tough one there. And Suzanne Grady is asking you a question from YouTube. And I know this is a tough one because you have 3 different classes of ships, right? You have the ocean, you have the river, and the expedition, and even the river, Viking Mississippi, and you even have the ones in Egypt. So all different shipbuilders. So I'm thinking that's off the top of my head. So everybody's been built by a different manufacturer or shipyards. So they're all not the same, Suzanne. So that's a tough question. But I'm going to hand this over to Michael. I just wanted to put that up front because that's what came to mind, that they're all basically different manufacturers. So, so I wanted to get to that.
The design is, intended to make it somewhat damper proof for sound. So I wouldn't say it's soundproof. I have never experienced noise from the cabin next door or below on any of the 23 plus cruises I've done with Viking. So I can say early on when the Viking Legend was sailing that the walls were somewhat thin. That was one of their first river cruise ships. But the long ships, we've never experienced that. I wouldn't say they're soundproof because that's very difficult to say, but they are definitely well designed, and I've never had noise from next door. So,
and I'll follow up with that, saying the same thing. Because unfortunately, you do remember if there's a noisy cabin.
Yeah,
you do really.
I mean, on the river, we typically don't see noisy cabins at all. Ocean cruises may have noise from below if they are above a public space or below the pool area, things like that. And so we do work with our guests when they contact us to find a cabin. It's one of the things that we work very hard to make sure that we don't put people in places where they would have an obstruction or noise from above or below. And so we will work with them to find the perfect cabin that fits their needs. Everybody's different, right? Some people want to be close to the elevator. Some people don't want to be close to the elevator. Some people want to be close to the laundrette. Some people don't want to be close to the laundrette. It just is, it's a matter of what the guest needs are. Again, it's not a one size fits all, but in general, Suzanne, the cabins are somewhat soundproof. I don't know if I would say they're 100% soundproof, but if you're worried about the TV next door or something like that, you're not going to hear it. I don't really know if they're screaming next door, if people could hear it, but there might be. Who knows?
Yeah, great answer. And I know Christy Ritter, excuse me, from Facebook. Hi, Christy. Thanks for leaving your comment. She's going, I'm going on the Mekong in July. Viking's partner, Gen Visa, charges an exorbitant price to arrange visas, which I've done on my own. Viking should be more straightforward about how you can do it yourself for a quarter of the price.
And Christy, I would encourage you to write Viking a letter and let them know that. I'm sure that they'd be interested to hear your feedback on the visa process. I will tell you that the visa companies as a whole, they are, revenue generating businesses for people that just don't want to take it on themselves. And a lot of people would rather just pay the fee to have a third party take care of all of that. And there are people that would rather, spend hours doing it themselves. I think it's a matter of personal preference, honestly. And I think that you'll find that GenVisa's fees are consistent in the marketplace with other visa companies. But again, what Viking wants to do is offer the guest the opportunity to work with somebody to get the visas and lower the stress level of having to do it themselves. So that is the alternative that they provide to the guest, because they don't want to handle it in-house. And the demand for having somebody else do it is far greater than those that want to do it on their own. And so they want to provide an avenue for the guest to be able to do that. And the benefit of doing it with the partner that Viking chooses is that the partner has access to the letters that are required, the information that's required to complete the information, and that kind of thing. So, but it is not, it's not a revenue generating thing for Viking, but it is a revenue generating business in general. Visa applications. There are several other companies that provide visa service, and you can shop those. But I think you'll find that GenVisa's fees are in line with their competition.
She had a follow up there. She goes, Christy wants to know, are they getting a kickback?
I doubt seriously that they are, but I'm not privy to that information. But as a general rule, I don't believe the cruise lines, who all have visa partners, are getting kickbacks from it. But I think they're just trying to provide their guests a legitimate avenue to get what they need and get their questions answered with a specialist that that handles visas every day. So that is the burden that they are tasked with, and guests are certainly able to do it on their own if that country is one of those countries where you can do it on your own very easily. Then I encourage my guests to do that. But we typically recommend the cruise lines partner because they are going to be most familiar with what the guests would need for that itinerary and be able to obtain the letters, the invitation letters and all of that very easily for the guest to get the visas that they need for their trip. So it is a personal preference, but it's a great question.
I've never had to get a visa before, but it sounds to me that working with this partner might cost more, but there's more personal contact with customer service. And also because they're partnered with Viking, they actually can have access to all of your information because they're working in conjunction with Viking directly. Whereas if you want,
and it can be a very stressful process for people, sending your passport off. Like when we had to get our visa for China, we had to send it off. It had to have a tracking number. We wanted to be able to be sure that we knew where the passport was at every point in the process, so the passport didn't get lost. And we used GenVisa for that, and we were able to track that process. That was somewhat of a relief to me than just mailing it off arbitrarily, hoping that we get the visa that we need. So I think that it depends on different itineraries and how, like for instance, Australia, New Zealand, you can apply for the visa online electronically. It's delivered via email. You don't have to send off your passport. That's a very easy visa to get. But the cruise line doesn't want to have to support the guests obtaining visas with the constantly changing visa rules and regulations. So they, all of them do this, farm it out to a third party that specializes in that, so that the information the guest is getting is up to date and reliable, and not just somebody reading from a script on the phone. Some from an information database. So it's something that the cruise lines don't want to support, and they don't have the resources to support people wise. So they farm it out, and for guests that want to do it on their own, they certainly can. And for guests that want some hand holding, they can use the visa partner from the cruise line.
Right. Well, you explained that well because I learned a lot. So thank you for sharing that. Apparently, it can be something else. And I want to let you know, Christy said thank you. She's going to give Viking their feedback directly. And she also wrote here, she says, I did send my passport to Cambodia embassy and tracked it too. Very stressful to send away your passport when you're going on vacation. And yeah, no doubt. I think you kind of alluded to that too, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, look, it can be very stressful, and some people live close to an embassy and can go do it themselves, or things like that. But for me, I'm very fortunate that I work every day and focus on my guests and their needs, and it's something that I had to farm out to somebody else because I just didn't have the time to do it. But yeah, it's just a matter of what works best for the client. So it's a great question, Christy, and I'm glad that you were able to obtain it. But as you saw, it can be stressful.
Yeah, and Nancy Warner actually kind of said, yeah, it is. She says it's very difficult to get a visa to enter Turkey on a cruise ship and fly out on a plane.
So not very difficult to get a visa for Turkey,
Oh,
Nancy.
is it?
It
Is
can be done online. It's so funny because somebody just asked this on the discussion board, the Facebook page yesterday, and I provided the link to where you can get that visa. It's essentially an electronic visa. You fill out the form, you pay the fee, and they issue the visa to you. You print it out and take it with you, and then it's also in their database in case you don't print it out. So it's very simple to do.
And Kathy had some advice for Susan about the cabin. She said, try and get a cabin with other cabins on all sides. I found that helps with noise.
Yeah, we avoid putting our client. We like to sandwich guests with cabins on all sides. So I agree with that.
And I think with the modern shipyards, I think it's no surprise anymore that guests are going to complain about being under those trafficked areas. That it seems to me like as I cruised on newer ships, those areas you don't seem to find those problems as on the modern ship design as you did in the past.
No, they're doing their best really to insulate the floors above and below, but still we take the precautions we can take, based on availability, and then talk the guests through the pluses and minuses if there's not a proximity that has a cabin, that's not below a public space. We let them know because we don't want there to be any surprises, right, when they get on board.
Yeah. And thank you, everybody, for your questions. If you haven't already asked your question, you've been holding back, don't be shy. We still got some time left. Please ask your question below. I know I'm learning a ton of stuff. I've never bought a visa before, these types of things, but I know it can be interesting. I went to Barbados last year, and with COVID still happening, that was interesting. So there's so many different things that you have to follow. So, and as I go through things and I read things and hear things, I learn so much, especially from the group. And on that note, Michael, I know there's a lot of group members still writing about air, and I know we can kind of beat this sometimes, but I still see people posting. It almost sounds like that the cruise lines, or not the cruise lines, that they book this cruise a year out or whatever, then they wait to get confirmation, but then sometimes they're frustrated, and I think you probably know what I'm trying to say here is that the schedule will change. The airline will change now the connections change. Now this has changed, that changed. The routes have changed. Everything's changed, from the time that they first started the process, and they get frustrated that the cruise line doesn't necessarily let them know. Sometimes they actually have Viking Air Plus, I think is what it's called, right? So I just wanted a little feedback on that. I know I'm kind of rambling here about it, but I just constantly see the same messages over and over on the group. And I'm hoping that you saw what I'm kind of alluding to or thinking of in my mind here, that I see the same kind of constant conversation on the group members where they're frustrated about they had this air arranged or they didn't know, and then now the connections changed. And it all seems very much airline related, because I know the airlines can be a mess. And apparently it's even worse internationally. It sounds like that what they thought they had to begin with, or even closer to travel, can change on a dime. And that I don't think it's necessarily the airline or the cruise line's fault, but there's a lot of frustration there. So as someone that deals with so many people, I mean, how do you deal with this? And can you kind of make some general statements to what I'm trying to explain to you?
Yeah, I think that, first of all, and I want to make sure that people understand that, generally, we don't charge any fees for our services, right? So the travel agent will assist you in getting the air schedule that best fits your needs, and also, that best fits what you're looking for. And I think that somebody who has a number of years of business, experience in the business, knows the airlines that are reliable and that they would rather put their guests on and things like that. And I think that that is something that is invaluable to the guest, and that some of these guests don't have when they're calling, Viking Air directly and working with the agent on the other end. We work really hard to find the best schedule for our client. I think we talked about this before, that we work to be the guest's, safety net when it comes to the air. When there's a problem, we're here to assist. We help resolve the problem so the guest doesn't have to sit on the phone and take care of it. And I think that really the best way to answer the question is to say you have to have an advocate. And the travel agent is your advocate in helping you get, what would be the best selected schedule under the cruise line's contracted rate. That's a really important point, that the cruise lines work with contracted rates, which means that they are somewhat limited in what they can offer. So they don't offer all the flights. They offer the flights that they are able to get contracted rates on. And so we help our clients find the best possible schedule under the contracted rate. We help them, navigate the seating thing, the whole 9 yards. Some airlines allow you to pre-select seats. Some airlines don't allow you to pre-select seats. Some airlines will let you pre-select them, and you can buy the seat in economy, things like that. So it just depends, and we are able to help our clients navigate that because we have the knowledge and the experience to do that. And I think that is the difference between the guests that we work with every day and the guests that you see posting on Facebook with their problems regarding air. Now, I mean, in fairness to the cruise line and the airlines, they change their flights, they change the hardware, which changes the seating chart, which changes the guest seats. And we tell our clients, make sure you're watching your seats, because the airlines will change the hardware and not tell anybody. So they may take a plane, and change a 777 to an A350. That changes the entire seating plan, and then the guests all of a sudden are in, a middle and aisle as opposed to a middle and window, or a window and aisle, whatever. And so one of the things that we do is we work with the guests to get their preferences, figure out what's going to be the best option. We present that to them, and then we're their advocate if there's a change to get something done. And that's a big plus, right? We're the safety net to make sure that the guest is getting the best value for their air dollar. And as everybody knows, Viking offers great pricing on the air. They have more contracts probably than any other vendor in the industry. They sell more air probably than any other vendor in the industry, and therefore have more resources for it. But you have to work with somebody that's going to help you find the best possible schedule. And I'll give you an example. So I had a client call me the other night at 4:00 in the morning. Her flight was canceled. Okay. She was in Hamburg, Germany. Okay. She had deviated the air to return from Hamburg. We had helped her do that deviation. And British Air canceled her flight from Hamburg. Panic. So she called our number. We have an emergency hotline. The phone rings to me, and which it always does in the emergency, it rings to me and to my office manager. And, one of us takes care of the issue. So we called the Viking Air department. The guests have been told, you have to work with the staff at the airport. We actually worked with the Viking Air department, against that advisement, and help them find a flight that would work. The first flight that they wanted to offer the guests was a flight from Hamburg to Iceland, Iceland to New York, New York to Denver, something like that. So, I mean, to me, it was not an ideal situation. Now we're talking about flying the day of. So our options are limited, but we worked with the air department to get a schedule that put her through two major cities to get her home, instead of sending her all the way to Iceland, mainly because if that flight is canceled, there are no other options for her. So, and this is the kind of insight that an experienced travel agent is going to bring to the table and help them navigate the situation. And what we look at when clients, we look at those types of things. Is there one flight a day from that city to the other city? If that's the case, that's a concern. So we look to see what the options are, so that there is an immediate backup plan if there is an issue with the flight. And so a lot of people think that it's important to look at flights by pricing, or, and the truth is that we want to find the most convenient path for the guest that has also a convenient backup plan. And that is something that only an experienced agent can give you, and not something that the Viking agent really took into account when that guest, we called or the guest called. And so we were able to advocate for them and get them flights that got them home. And I was really pleased because as soon as she got home, she sent us a thank you note and said, thank you for being there and thank you for taking care of it. And, I went back to sleep happy that my guest was happy. So, it's very frustrating to get up in the middle of the night and not be able to accomplish that. So we always try to accomplish it as best we can for our guests.
Well, that's a great story, and thank you. I didn't know you had a bat line.
Oh, yeah, we have a bat line. Yeah.
That's
No,
great.
look, as I said, we're responsible for our guests from beginning to end. I think it's very important to them and for them to have that safety net and to know that we're going to be there to advocate for them. That phone rings to 3 different people and will continue to ring until somebody answers and takes care of the guest. So
that's great, and thank you for the explanation. That it's complicated. I know, and I see people posting on the groups, and you just kind of feel for them. And then it's sometimes the more you hear, the more confused you get as far as am I missing something? But it's just obviously really complicated at times. And thank you for sharing your insight because obviously this is what you do every day, and that. And you've kind of, just like everything, anybody in business, you've learned things the hard way. That's why you say you got to have a backup plan. You have to look at the big picture is what I'm hearing you say. And that's what you bring to your clients. And of course, a lot of times someone at a call center, no matter what brand it is, they might not be thinking about that, and know those big pictures that you get from all your years in business.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that people don't realize the value that an agent brings. And just to give you another example, I mean, when we look at the schedule for a guest, we look at the connection times. We look at the the cities that they're going through. Is that a city that is prone to lose luggage? Is that a city where there are flights that are canceled? I have, guests that from all over the country, obviously. And this one particular flight that Viking had assigned to the guest, it had like a 65% cancellation rate. It was late at night. The flight left I think it left Atlanta at 10 o'clock. It was an hour-long flight, and it had a 65% cancellation rate. I mean, who's going to tell the guest that, right? So we went back to them and said, look, you got to give them another flight. This flight nobody wants to be abandoned in the Atlanta airport at 11 o'clock at night, right? And figure out how to get home. That means they're going to be stuck at a hotel and then have to get a flight out the next day. And that's not convenient. Those are the types of proactive steps that we take for our clients that make sure that we limit. Okay, this stuff happens. Flights get canceled, luggage gets lost, but we're going to look at it from a standpoint of how can we limit those experiences for our guests so that they have a great experience from beginning to end. So yes, it happens 100%, but we work very hard to see how we can limit that to avoid those situations that you read about on Facebook. And we want to make sure that we take whatever steps are necessary to ensure that that doesn't happen.
Here's a new tagline. Don't be a message on Facebook.
Yeah. Don't be a negative message on Facebook. Look, that's the truth. That's the nature of travel. That there are challenges that are come up. I mean, listen, I have clients that call me and they're going. I mean, I have a client that's traveling in a couple of weeks to South America. They read about the political unrest and that there was a change in the hotel, and the people ended up staying in a lower grade hotel. I mean, there are parts of travel that are just not controllable. What we have to do is make sure that we provide an avenue to assist those guests when those situations arise, and that we have done the best we can to limit those situations so that their trip is not as impacted as others might be.
Obviously I've been an observer of this industry for a long time now, and of course with these communities and groups and stuff like that that we're all part of, you still see those messages where people go, I booked it myself, I booked directly, and they're kind of adamant about it.
Yeah.
And I don't get it. And I really do think that they really think that travel agents are making, like, they're charging extra, or there's some kind of scheme going behind the scenes that they're saving something by booking directly.
Yeah, they're actually, in my opinion, with us, leaving money on the table, because we actually will always have some sort of small onboard credit gift, something like that. But really, they don't have an advocate. They're their own advocate, right? So I tell people this all the time. You have to have an advocate. You have to have somebody that's going to go to bat for you, and that has some leverage. I mean, clearly we have leverage with, the cruise line, but it is something that is really important to have an advocate. And I think there are agencies that charge fees. we don't charge fees. There are agencies that collect their funds in-house and, hold the money. We don't collect funds in-house. We process all of our payments directly with the vendor. That's something that's really important to people. I think that what you're seeing when you see that is that people are worried about the loss of control of their reservation. And I have to tell people, you don't lose control over your reservation. You go through us, through your advocate, to make your payments, your changes, your updates, that kind of thing. But if you have to call the cruise line to do,
Can you say that one more time? I think we lost you for a second, Michael. We may have lost Michael for a second.
oh, okay.
Let's see if you come back. Okay,
Yeah.
we're going to go back a couple seconds here because you locked up for a minute. So I think you said if you have to. So if you can just rewind yourself to where you said if you have to do those things, they don't lose control of their booking.
Yeah, if you have to make a change or something like that, you don't lose control over your booking. For instance, with Viking, you still have access to the 3.3% discount. You still have access to the My Viking journey. I think that a lot of people that you read that say that online, oh, I call and I do it directly, they don't realize that they have, not only do they have those resources that they have through Viking, they also have the resources of an experienced travel agent to help them, right? If you call Viking and you want to stay 2 extra days after and they don't have that package, Viking is not going to help you. We'll help you. If you want to purchase insurance for a trip that, besides just the cruise you're purchasing from Viking, because you're going to your cousins for a week or you're going to go explore the Alps for a week, we are able to offer you that. They are not able to offer you that. Those are the types of things that people don't realize that we also add to the mix. Right? We give another perspective. I can tell you about other lines that might be a better fit for what you're looking for than Viking in certain situations because we sell all those lines. Viking can't do that. They are only one person is going to be able, they're only going to be able to sell one product to you, and that's only anything that Viking sells. The experience that an experienced agent brings can give you other avenues to pursue or other things to look at besides just the Viking options.
And you hadn't said it yet, but you said it before. It's that big picture thinking, looking at the overall picture as far as connections and looking out for the client's best interest as far as making sure that they have a backup on the flights, that they're not going to be that 65% cancellation on that flight that they were given, the first choice they were given. So, of course, you go to bat for your client and say, you know what, let's see if we can find another option.
That, and personally, we can, I can, having been on the number of different cruises, can speak to differences between the lines, the ships, the cabins, that kind of thing. And the majority of the res agents that you call don't have that experience. And that's something that's very important to be able to share the firsthand experience with the guest.
And Joe actually had a question. Joe, I'm not gonna try to say your last name for some reason. I think I drank too much coffee, Joe. But he's asking, is my full payment for a cruise is due next month? Do I pay Michael or do I go through Viking?
Hi, Joe. Thanks for the question. You will contact us to make the payment, but we process it directly with Viking on your behalf.
I was making sure he was a client.
Yeah, he is. He's my client. So.
That's great. Well, thanks, Joe, for writing. We appreciate it. I was going to make a joke, but I didn't think it was appropriate. Wow. Well, I tell you what, we learned so much today.
I just want to mention one more thing. That's what I was saying, is that a lot of times people think that agents are collecting the funds in-house. We don't do it that way. We process it, whether it's Royal Caribbean, Celebrity, Region 7 Seas, Tauck, any of those. We process the payment directly with the vendor. We don't collect the funds in-house, and I think that's very important for people to know.
Yeah, and personally, I mean, I don't recommend you ever deal with an agent that does that. That's those horror stories that you hear,
right.
That were these agents that, and just talking to everybody, the greater audience here watching, some of the horror stories you hear about travel agents, which is not really true for modern day agents or like Michael, is these agents that, write the payment to me. No, you should be writing it to the cruise line. If you deal with an agent that's charging you fees, that's asking you to write a check to them directly, I think those are red flags personally that you should walk away from and maybe consider dealing with someone reputable like Michael, because those are the headlines that historically that are problems, because, you got a group of 30 cruisers and they all are writing down deposits or checks to a person or an agency. Then the agency holds that money, and then, by the time final payments due, it just happened to disappear, or the travel agent that might have once been reputable now, of course, is having financial problems and doesn't have the money to actually give to the cruise line. Most travel agencies and most cruise lines, or the vendors, as Michael's been saying, they don't work that way. All the payments go directly to the vendor, directly to the cruise line. The travel agent is simply a conduit to provide customer service and guidance for that travel product. Did I say
Yeah, I
that
mean,
right?
the real reason is because we have had guests that are like, oh, I want to write you a check and blah blah blah, and the real thing is that if the guest cancels, we want the money to go back to the guest, right? We don't want it to come back to us and then distribute it to the guest. It's not part of the model that we use for selling. Some agencies want to make money on the float. We don't want to make money on the float. We want to make money on people coming to us and then coming back to us and then referring their friends to us and then coming back to us again. That's what we're in business to do, and that's what we work hard to do. So we process all of our payments directly with the cruise line for that very reason.
And I know Susan and Kathy, hopefully you can see these things here. I'm going to put up they're having a little chat here. Kathy said, Susan, sounds like a wonderful cruise. We're booked in August. And then Susan says she's concerned about a cabin near the elevators. I may cancel and rebook when I get a better cabin location. I tell you, I've been really close to elevators, Suzanne, lately, and I haven't heard a thing. So
I will tell you that is a major concern that people have. And I also have had cabins, suites, no less, right next to, specifically cabin 7116, right next to the elevator bank on deck 7, which is, a pretty busy deck, right? That's where the Explorer's Lounge is on the ocean ship. No noise at all. I think that what people also don't realize about the Viking product, there's no children, no casinos, there's no belly flop contest, so there's not like, it's not a rambunctious crowd. So the noise, you're not going to hear the ding of the elevator. As far as soundproof goes, I never had a complaint about the proximity to the elevator. So if you're concerned about that, it's not something that I would tell you to be concerned about. If there was another cabin available to you, that would be great. But is that going to inhibit your experience? I have guests that say that were concerned about it, and then they were so pleased with being so close to the elevator because they took it 3 times a day to go get breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that they really loved it and then came back and asked for a cabin near the elevator. So I would not be concerned on the Viking ships about your cabin being near the elevator. But I would love to chat with you if you want to go over it. I see your next thing says you'll be contacting me. So thank you. I'd love to hear from you. And we'll help you talk through that.
Yeah, well, we continue. We both agree then, because it seems like a lot of my cabins lately, just in general, have been near elevators, and there's a stigma that, oh, it's going to be bad. It's going to be so loud. I haven't heard a thing. So is there an exception? Sure. Sometimes it can vary ship to ship, different lines, different things, but overall, I haven't had a problem.
Yeah, and I really try very hard to make sure my clients are not under the pool deck. I mean, if that's possible, or under the World Cafe, things like that, because there can be noise from above in those spaces. Again, as they said before, we would like to make sure that our clients have cabins above and below, side to side, that kind of thing. So, oh, well, that's what she just said. Agent directed to 6, I booked on 5 and have cabins all around. Okay, so you're good. I definitely would encourage you to keep the cabin on deck 5.
And she says, I understand that there are doors between the elevators and the hallway and the cabins.
Yeah, there really are not doors. There's openings. It's very walled off, I guess I would say. Very unlikely you would have noise from the elevators at all. So I honestly wouldn't be concerned about it. But it's a great question.
Yeah. Wow. So we're just over an hour now. We've covered so much ground. I've learned quite a bit. Suzanne is ready to go. I think we've helped her. I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate everyone that's actually watched and tuned in today. And I know there's going to be many, many hundreds of people watching this after once this goes out into the internet recorded. And she's saying, thank you so much. Thank you again, Suzanne. We really appreciate it. And I know sometimes we talk about this too. Sometimes it's the buildup, the suspense to your cruise when it's coming is just as exciting as the planning and actually going on the cruise, right? That's what I'm trying to say.
100%.
So is there anything that we haven't added that you want to leave the group here, that all the viewers, that some tidbit or something on your mind as far as Viking that we haven't covered already?
Just keep in mind that the demand for 24 and 25, or 24 specifically, very high. They are probably 95% sold for 2023. So there's very little availability out there on anything. So their focus now is 2024. And I think that you'll see that a lot of that is selling very well, especially in the popular months. So, I get the question a lot, what's the best time to book? What's the best time to book? I mean, the best time to book is as early as possible so that you have the cabin choices you want and don't end up under the pool deck like we talked about, that kind of thing. So, yeah, so I definitely would encourage people to book early, hold what you're most interested in, and take advantage of the specials that are available. We will make sure that our guests take advantage of any special that's available when they book, and take care of whatever needs they have along the way.
Yeah, so wonderful. And I know we've got a Facebook user saying we just started to do river trips. I love river cruises. I know you do too, Michael.
Yes, absolutely. Fell in love with river cruising 10 years ago. That's how I got here.
And then Suzanne said, yes, great service. She says, agree, overplan to the max. Awesome. And, I know we've kind of covered it earlier. We've got a couple more days. There's like 3-4 more days at the end of the month here where the Viking's offering the $25 deposit. And can I ask you just to reiterate what that advantage is? Because I imagine we have a lot of people watching, going to be watching the next couple of days. What's the benefit of using a $25 deposit? I know you also had mentioned that there's really limited space as far as inventory with Viking in the next couple of years. So I just called your office, $25 deposit. What should I lock in and how should I do it?
Yeah, I mean, you want to pick the itinerary that you want, okay? Because once you book it at $25, if you change it to a different itinerary during a period there's not a $25 deposit, then you have to pay the full deposit when you make the change. So definitely want to find something and take advantage of that low deposit, and make sure that you're working with somebody that can help you find the right fit for you and what you want to do. But yeah, the $25 deposit is a great opportunity to hold, multiple cabins over the next 3 years if that's what you want to do.
And so if I cancel, like I said, you get the money back, right? So just a great opportunity.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Viking does have a $100 per person cancellation penalty for cancellations after deposit. So while they wouldn't be obligated to pay more money than the $25 per person deposit, the deposit typically is non-refundable.
Okay. Well, really
But just for the $25 deposit. In the normal environment where the deposit is $500 per person, $100 of it is immediately non-refundable. The rest of it is refundable up to 121 days prior to departure.
So what itinerary that, as far as some bucket list itinerary or something that that's selling very quickly, that's limited quantity for the next 24, 25 itinerary that you'd say, what, if you really are on the fence, to everybody that's watching, you can still get it for $25. You can still lock it in because it's probably going to be gone pretty soon. Is there a certain itinerary that stands out in your mind?
That's a great question, and is actually a great answer for it too. That would be Pharaohs and Pyramids, the Egypt cruise on the Nile. It is something that sells very quickly. Availability for people that were looking for 2024 and early 2025, and those were already sold out months ago. There's a new ship on the Nile that just was introduced. It will start in October of 2024, and you can book that cruise now with the pre and post extensions, both Jerusalem pre and Petra, Jordan, and Amman post. Those are available as well. If you're looking for Egypt, now is the time to book that new ship, which was just introduced 2 weeks ago.
Can you tell us the itinerary again? You kind of got a little pixelated there.
Yeah, it's Pharaohs and Pyramids, which is on the Nile, and you have the opportunity to spend additional time before in Jerusalem and after in Petra, Jordan, and Amman. So it's a really great itinerary. It's probably their fastest selling itinerary. The other itinerary that is very popular is also the Douro. That sells quite quickly as well. The popularity of Portugal is driving that business, and it's really hard to find space during a good time to travel in Portugal. So would encourage people to look at those first if they're on their bucket list.
That's great. So that's exactly what I wanted to hear. Something where people can actually take some action here. These cruises are really selling fast. We've talked about it for many, many months now here on these live streams that these ships only hold a very limited amount of, especially in Egypt. I think it's only like 50 people, 50 cabins, 100 people maybe.
Yeah. So the Egypt ships are, I think they have 42 cabins. The Duro ships are more like 120 guests. So yeah, they're smaller than the long ships, definitely smaller than the ocean ships. If there was an ocean itinerary, somebody just said, what about an ocean itinerary? If there was that I would say is very popular, it would probably be Mediterranean Odyssey or British Isles Explorer. The British Isles Explorer sells really quickly. It's a very unique itinerary. And with the cancellation of Russia on the Homelands cruises, they've actually added extra ships to British Isles Explorer, and they're still selling really well. So, yeah, definitely some great options for travel.
So you heard it here first. Obviously, you're getting the scoop, inside scoop, as far as where there's some new ships now, new inventory, and these high sales, these itineraries that sell fast. We also have a couple days left for this $25 deposit. So here's your chance to contact Michael. Give him a call at 1-800-913-7245. And of course, Michael at planmycruise.com. Give him a call. See what your options are. We got a couple days left with these really reduced deposits that we don't know when they're coming back. So why don't you lock in something for 24, 25 and take that bucket list experience and cruise. And really, really appreciate you sharing everything. Michael Consoli, top global producer for Viking. We really appreciate it, Michael.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it too. I hope everybody has a great weekend.
Yeah. So until we meet again, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you then.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, John. Have a good day.
Thank you.